Edmunds, home of serious car reviews.
Hey, Carlos Lago with Edmunds here, and that's a V8 Jeep. More specifically, it's the 2021 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392, a Wrangler with 470 horsepower that you can just go buy from your local dealership like that's a totally normal thing. In this video, we're gonna explain what that engine is, how it fits, how quick it makes this Jeep Wrangler, how glorious it sounds, and how it feels on and off-road. Hey, if you don't like videos like this one, leave a comment below. We want to know why. And if you do like videos like this one, tell that other commenter why they're wrong. How could you not like a video like this one? Also, check the links in the description for more information. And of course, visit edmunds.com/sellmycar to get an instant cash offer on your car, truck, or V8 Jeep Wrangler. Cramming a 6.4 liter V8 into a Wrangler Rubicon isn't an easy or inexpensive process. For starters, the 392, that's the displacement in cubic inches, it's only available in the off-road Rubicon spec, and it has a starting price of $75,000. That's approximately 30 grand more than a four-door Rubicon without options. Seems steep, right? But remember, there's no way you'd probably be able to do this in the aftermarket for the same money and retain the factory functionality. The engine is fundamentally the same one that you'd find under the hood of that Dodge Charger or Dodge Challenger that's always driving way too fast in your neighborhood. On top of 470 horsepower, it also makes 470 pound-feet of torque, and it's connected to an 8-speed automatic and a 2-speed transfer case. I would also just like to take a second to recognize that this is a Jeep Wrangler that, in terms of displacement, has a larger V8 than you'll find under the hood of any full-size pickup. I love this country. Now, how did Jeep actually fit this engine in here? Well, it took a lot of adjustments and modifications. The accessory drive system on the front, for example, had to be changed. The alternator now sits at the top passenger side of the engine. At the bottom, you've got an oil pan that's kind of been flipped around. You've got a new oil filter. You've got new exhaust manifolds. And then you have this whole plastic thing at the top here. What is that? Well, when you have an engine this big in a tiny engine bay, air supply becomes very important. The engine, of course, needs to breathe air to run, but it also needs air to cool itself down. But when it's in a Jeep, you also need to expect it to be able to drive through, I don't know, a river, a lake. So maintaining the fording depth is very important as well. So Jeep designed this system to separate air from water and evacuate more water than intakes normally have to deal with. Jeep says that this system can run with the hood scoop totally clogged, and essentially this means you don't need to run a snorkel, which is kind of a shame because snorkels look cool. So the first question people will ask you when you're telling me you've got a V8 Wrangler is, will it do a burnout? And unfortunately the answer is no. No, this American 470 horsepower SUV cannot do a burnout because it's full-time all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. It's a real tragedy. But you know what isn't a tragedy is the acceleration. The second question people ask you is, how quick is it? And it turns out quite quick. We've already tested it. I'm gonna do an acceleration run now to show you what it looks like as we put the specs up in graphics. I've turned on the exhaust, or the performance exhaust, by hitting the button. The next step is just to hit the gas. Just listen to that. And there's the speed limiter. So, is it quick? Yes. Is it quicker than it has any right to be? Yes. But that's what makes it so amazing. And if you couldn't tell by my face, I absolutely adore how fast or quick this thing is in a straight line. And that sound is fantastic. And now we're off-road. Ahead of me, of course, is our infamous ziggurat of integrity that the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon will have no trouble climbing up. We're doing this though because there's a key difference in the drivetrain between this 392 and a regular Rubicon aside from that V8 engine, and that has to do with the low range ratio. This doesn't have numerically as high of a ratio or as short of a ratio, however that works out in terms of language. So the crawl ratio overall isn't as high as what you get in a standard Rubicon. But when you have 470 pound-feet of torque from a V8 engine, does it really matter? I would say not. Also, how is the throttle control at really low speeds? When you're in 4 low, which I'll get into now, when you're in 4 low and you're climbing up something that needs a lot of careful control at low speeds to meter out all that torque, what's the throttle control in a V8 engine going to be like? Let's find out. I'll put it in 4 low. I'm going to lock the front and rear differentials because you still have those in this 392, and I'm going to disconnect the front sway bar, which you still have in the 392 Rubicon. All right, so just going to leave it in drive and see if I can't run over this GoPro. A little bit of throttle, and we're up on the first step. Second step. Third step. And that's the top, yeah? I'm rep checking with Casey on the outside to make sure that's the top. That was really easy, as you would expect a regular Rubicon to be, but the throttle control was really smooth as well. Yeah, this is still a Rubicon, even though it has a V8. Let's get out and take a look. Oh boy. Can I actually get out? Whew. Gotta do this at home, kids. Get out, just doing some truck stuff. I think I'm getting all right at this. So Rubicon 392 is still the Rubicon, surprise, surprise, but there are some key differences between this and a non-V8 Rubicon. Let's look at the front. Hi there. So, front end, it's actually pretty similar up here, but we do get an opportunity to look at some of the things that were changed on this V8 to make it fit in here. Specifically, the oil pan, which has a sump in the back, apparently on normal 6.4 liter V8s in the Stellantis lineup, which is called now, that sump is closer to the front, but you got this front solid axle here blocking the way, so that wouldn't really work. And hopefully the oil filter is right up here, which makes for changes really easy, or let's say parking lot pranks if you really want to ruin someone's day. Don't do that. As for suspension and clearance differences, we'll talk about them at the back here because that front wheel's kind of jammed up in the fender. But as you can see, the Fox shocks are proudly displayed. Those are standard on the Rubicon 392, but you don't get them factory on other Rubicons. This has a 2.5-inch lift relative to standard Rubicons as well, and that improves the clearances, specifically the approach and departure angle, by 1/2 degree, I think. Wheels and tires, they're 17-inch wheels all around with a beadlock capability, so you have a means of mechanically affixing the tire to the rim of the wheel if you plan on doing really gnarly stuff. And the tires themselves are 33-inch BF Goodrich KO2, but you can option mud terrain tires as well. I believe they're Falcons. Lastly, we have to call this out. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you've known that we've driven a lot of SUVs and trucks up the ziggurat of integrity, and the Jeep Wrangler is always the one that leaves its driver's side rear tire on the ground. Why is that? Well, it's because this Jeep has better articulation than pretty much anything on the market. You can disconnect the front sway bar electronically, and that allows the chassis and suspensions to flex. And why it's important to keep this tire on the ground when that tire is way up in the air is because that means this tire can still keep applying power to the ground. And that's important because it means that all of your tires are still touching the ground. That's generally a good thing when you're trying to crawl. The Rubicon 392 does what you'd expect a Rubicon to do. Obviously, it's appropriate for the name. It has the clearance, it has the articulation, but what makes it so special is that V8 engine. And it's not that it becomes suddenly a sporty SUV. That's not the point at all. And yet that's what a lot of people assume when I tell them that, yeah, this Wrangler's got a 470 horsepower V8. Does it handle? No. Does it stop well? No. It's about delivering that Rubicon capability, but with a fantastic soundtrack. Listen. And that will make you laugh every single time you experience it. That's really what makes this Wrangler so special. I'm driving at moderate speeds through a sand wash, and yeah, this is not a Baja destined Wrangler. It's more for all-purpose off-road, and yet the experience is so much fun in this thing. It's not made to be the fastest for speed, but it's that combination of just incredible power and soundtrack in something that it appears was not necessarily intended to have it. And that's why it's so much fun in every situation. It's that merge of, yeah, we did an engine swap in this thing, not because we should, but because we could. And what becomes really weird out of this Frankensteinish experiment is that what benefits the most is the on-road driving experience. I've logged a couple hundred miles in this Wrangler, and I can tell you by far it's been the nicest one to drive on city streets and freeways. The additional weight of this engine and all the supporting hardware and the new shocks and whatever changes else they've made have quieted down the ride, have made the steering easier to control, have made the interior quieter as well. This is a more refined, dare I say it, version of the Wrangler Rubicon. That's by no means to say it's comfortable. That's by no means to say it's gonna be anything other than a Wrangler. It still has a lot of those elements, but it is so far improved versus the Wrangler Rubicon that it's based on. And that on-road improvement makes this thing the best Wrangler yet, for sure. Yeah, it comes with a price tag. Yeah, it comes with a hefty fuel economy issue. But you know what? I'd say given how this makes me feel from behind the wheel, I'd trade off all of that. This makes everybody who gets in it, everybody who experiences the acceleration and the capability off-road, it makes people smile. And hey, this is a Jeep. That's what it should be doing. It should be fun. This is one of the remaining few unabashedly characterful vehicles that you can go buy new. And I'm so happy it exists, and I'm so happy that it is this ridiculous. Are there competitors? Kind of. Yeah, there will be a V8 Defender. Yeah, there's a Bronco coming out soon, and there might be a version of that with the V8. Yes, there is the G-Wagon, but none of them, based on what I've been able to drive so far, are gonna give you exactly what this offers. Ultimately, this is still a Jeep. You can still take the doors off, you can still drop the windshield, you can still take the roof off. And that experience, outside of the forthcoming Bronco potentially, is completely unique, especially with this soundtrack. To put it simply, I adore this thing. It's just fun. The Wrangler Rubicon 392 is fantastic. Big surprise, right? But it's great because it merges the capability you'd expect from a Rubicon with this V8 soundtrack and acceleration you'd expect from a 6.4 liter 470 horsepower V8. And it also adds a bunch of on-road improvements from ride quality to refinement to steering feel and all that. Oh, and passing power, of course, how can we forget? On top of that though, this is a really fun vehicle to drive no matter where you drive it. I swear I've laughed more behind the wheel of this thing than I have in most sports cars I've driven in the past few years. Whenever you get a first timer in the passenger seat, get a camera on them when the first time you nail the gas. It's really that much fun. Are there downsides? Of course. It's $75,000 to start, and that's a lot of money, but I'd argue that this is a wholly unique experience that you can't really find or get from a competitor. Also, 14 mpg combined by the EPA. That's not great, but if you really care about fuel economy, you probably stopped watching this video a long time ago. And if you haven't and you hate watching it, maybe get a new hobby. I don't know, or talk to somebody who cares. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you want to know more, check the links in the description. Edmunds.com/sellmycar. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm out of here.